Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. Is monogamy overrated? My guest this week is Polly May. She is a relationship coach in the ethical non-monogamy space. She has a lot to say about that question. There's a lot of data out there to suggest that monogamy may not be all that it's cracked up to be. We're going to talk about polyamory. We're going to talk about open relationships, swinging, sex parties. She's going to talk about how she got into this work, about how she took a quiz with her partner, and that led them to start on this trajectory where they had different experiences that ultimately led up to a full swap with another couple, and then where it went from there. You guys are going to love this episode. It's super interesting. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Polly May.
This week's conversation.
Polly May, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. They don't want to hear my bullshit, but like I've been behind this desk in front of this camera, for like 3 years, haven't really moved that much, just a couple of things around the apartment, but, they better appreciate it. No, I'm kidding. I'm doing really good. So people are now wondering, okay, what is happening? What's going on this week? Who is this person? Who is Polly May? So could you take a moment and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. So hello, everybody. I am Polly May, and I am an ethical non-monogamous relationship coach. I also run events here in Brisbane, and I just do a lot around educating people and helping them get introduced to this lifestyle.
Yeah. And so this is always a very, very popular topic on the show, I think, for a lot of reasons. And especially, well, I would say equally amongst men and women. Obviously, like dudes are going to be like, oh my God, I'm horny. I can have sex with other people. How do I make this happen? And women maybe are like, and I don't know, I'm not speaking for women, but just around the show, the messages I get are like, this would be fun if my partner wouldn't put his fist through a wall, or, the jealousy stuff or whatever. So it's always a very popular topic in the sense of like people are interested and intrigued and horny, but then it's also like a popular topic because people are like, wait a minute, and they feel a little triggered around it, right? And so,
Yeah, totally.
and so maybe if you could just start off by talking a little bit about what ethical non-monogamy is versus non-monogamy. And I'll let you take the wheel.
Oh, okay. Ethical non-monogamy versus just non-monogamy.
Yeah. Just for the noobs here. Then yeah.
Yeah. Well, monogamy is obviously, two people who are, the general idea is like committed to each other and blah, 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 and it's just the two. Obviously, then non-monogamy is when one or both of those people are not staying true to that commitment. And that usually, in just normal non-monogamy, you might call that infidelity, or cheating. I will say, though, that there's a little bit of a subtle movement in the ethical non-monogamy community just to start calling it non-monogamy. But then adding that extra layer of what is ethical non-monogamy is then it can manifest as so many different things.
Right.
It's not as simple as just being polyamorous or just being an open relationship. Like there's a huge umbrella of different ways that people can show up and be ethically non-monogamous. But that ethical component really comes down to honesty, transparency, and having a lot of trust and open communication in your relationship. But in essence, ethical non-monogamy is just simply the practice of one or both partners partaking in different relationships outside of that dyad relationship. And that those other relationships could be sexual exclusively, they could be romantic, they could be both. And then that's where you just get into all the different nuances of what actually makes up ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that, because I feel like just to set the table before we rip the tablecloth out, and hopefully the flowers will still be standing. But having you as a professional set that tone and give those definitions, just in case. I mean, this show, I feel like, is anybody can engage with it, and in terms of like, beginner, novice, intermediate, expert, oh my, like, whatever. So I want everyone to kind of just, sometimes we have to ask the basic bitch questions, just to kind of set the tone a little bit. Now for a more fun question, why is monogamy overrated? Because that's the first post on your Instagram, and I love that as the first post on your Instagram. So why do you believe monogamy is overrated?
So that's actually not my quote. It's a quote from somebody I spoke to at a party a couple months ago. And
nice.
when she said it, I just laughed so hard, and I thought it was a beautiful quote, because she was somebody who's been in a long-term relationship, like, I can't remember, but more than 10, 15 years. And they had not opened the relationship yet. But she was explaining to me that in conversation with her husband, that's what they came down to. Oh, monogamy is actually overrated. And perhaps I should have written that a little bit better on my Instagram, because somebody did comment. I can't remember what they said. I can't remember it now, but basically it kind of insinuated as if I was speaking ill of monogamy, and I don't do that. I don't believe in creating more division in an already divided world. Everything I'm about is just creating more options and more unity. And if for all those wonderful people out there who are experiencing monogamy and they're enjoying it, power to you. That's fantastic. Makes me happy to hear. But why is it overrated is because monogamy has been so built up. Like, speaking from the female experience, I am a woman that was fed Disney movies my whole life, princess movies, Barbie movies. And in all of those movies, all of that content that I was given as a very small child, all centered around finding your one true love. And it really deeply romanticizes this idea of finding one person who completes you, who you live your whole life with. But then you get into these long-term relationships and you're in your happily ever after, and you're like, well, what next, right? So monogamy is overrated because it's been built up into this impossible standard, and there are other options. And when you look at the other options, they're pretty great.
Yeah. No, I mean, and also too, on the Disney movie thing, yeah, they try to build up like the Prince Charming thing. It's more of like a Prince harming thing. It's like it hurts everybody kind of a deal. When you do build, and we'll get back into that, but the quote in question, the comment in question, rather, if you'd like me to read it, I have it here that the person. Yeah, so your thing just is a quote that says monogamy is overrated, which, by the way, I really like that it's the first thing on your page, and you should not change it and you should not alter it. I personally think you should leave it because it's kind of a rock star. I feel triggered, but I'm also intrigued, and like, so I think it'll pull people in, right? I think it's great. This person wrote, Crumpets wrote, I think there's a bunch of misspellings in here, so they're already disqualified. But I think they're a very strong case, the healthiness of monogamy over non-monogamy, even though I myself would identify my preference as ENM, ethical non-monogamy. There are serious moral deficiencies in both and also benefits in both. So they said absolutely nothing. It's like totally. And you had a great response, which we don't even need to read because you sort of like, made your point and said, sure, that you can believe that, but whatever. But I also think that, and obviously, like, agree with me or disagree with me. People do it all the time, but depending on the person, monogamy can be quite limiting. I mean, even if you don't plan on bringing other people in, the idea that you cannot speak about it in traditional relationships, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
that can be so suffocating.
Mm-hmm.
So suffocating that you can't speak about it in your relationship. And what's worse than that is it can elicit feelings of shame because we are attracted to other people.
Yeah.
We are. And if you're watching this and you say, I'm not, okay. Most of us are, though.
Sure.
Most of us, we look around and we have attraction to other people, and that's completely natural and in fact is a healthy physiological response. And it's so sad to me that, and part of one of my many motivating things on why I am doing what I'm doing is that people then just start to feel shame for thinking certain things or feeling certain things. And then they come into these monogamous relationships and they just never speak. And everything in life has these ripple on effects. So if you don't speak about that, it's going to you're not going to show up as authentically as you could be. And just that in and of itself is a very big motivating factor to at least have the conversation. Like when I talk to people about boundary setting, for example, I tell them, make it a really safe space. Make it that both people can say whatever they need to say around their desires. And also in that safe space, ensure that neither person is expecting that they have to act on that desire. Because just having that open communication, even if your partner says, I don't want to do that, it's really important for showing up authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and also too, see, I think it's hard because, and my, myself growing up, I was a bit of a troublemaker if no one's aware there, and I was a bit of like, I don't know, perhaps like a relationship anarchist, but no one really knew that except for me. So I was like practicing non-monogamy that was like not ethical. So basically I was cheating a lot and like doing whatever the hell I wanted and justifying it and doing all the things for quite a long time. I also had monogamous relationships that whatever, but I just, I would get to a point where I felt uh and this is no excuse for my behavior at all, whatever. And I own all that. And, I've done all of those things. I've gaslit, I've cheated, I've lied, I've done all of those things. And I own all that. But there was a piece of me that felt like, every time I try, and again, I'm not making excuses, but every time I try to bring up this other like horny kind of like deviant side of my behavior, it would just get this like, goofy look or sort of like whatever. And it didn't feel comfortable. There wasn't room to really even have a conversation to a point. Right. But it's like, and some of that might've been my fault, but all of that to say, I think most, and again, you have more of the numbers or an expertise in this than I do, but most relationships don't have room for conversations about most non-monogamy. If you're entering into a monogamous relationship and you do find someone attractive, or you do want to try to instigate or introduce, I don't know what the fuck, whatever, use whatever word, a threesome or something like that, it's usually like you're sleeping on the couch kind of a thing, right? At least here in America. So how do you think someone should go about if they've never had a conversation like that and they are feeling like, I kind of want to turn up the dial a little bit. I kind of want to get a little weird. I kind of want to experiment and keep the shit spicy. Like, how do they even approach that without having some blowout fight and we're breaking up and all that shit?
Okay, before I answer that, I actually just want to go back a little bit to some of what you just said there.
Sure.
Because there are a few points that I think you said a lot of things that will resonate with people. For example, somewhere in there you said something along the lines of, maybe it was my fault potentially for how I brought that up or something.
Sure.
And what I want to say to that is, sure, we can always do better. There's a never-ending journey of growth in life.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, if you are someone who's brought up one of those conversations, I really encourage you to have compassion for yourself, because it's not about fault, in my opinion. It is about the fact that we have not been taught how to communicate, and we have not been given the options or the education around what types of relationship styles are actually out there. And there are a lot of people who I believe are sitting in this space of having had that initial conversation with their partner, and then they feel guilt and even shame for how poorly it went. And sure, there's a lot of growth and learning to be taken from those moments, but please don't feel guilty or shameful for things that you simply were not educated in.
Yeah, no, I think that's humongous. I just think, I mean, I think maybe for me, I didn't even realize, and still like not even sure what it was I was trying to do. I just think that I felt a level of sexuality that was not matched by my partners at the time, and like that's not their fault, but at the same time, there's got to be a lot of people out there that feel like, I mean, it's different, right? Like, especially only speaking for myself, but you can lump some dudes into this. It's like, some days, it's like, oh, I'm watching this kind of porn, or I'm thinking about this weird thing, or like whatever. And those are thoughts just for me. Maybe I shouldn't tell, but I went through this thing where I'm like, I'm done kind of not saying what's on my mind. So I said like literally everything that was on my mind. And that can be messy, and that can be constricting and very like disappointing. So I was kind of coming from it to a place like that. I don't even know. I mean, there were conversations about threesomes and those sorts of things, but also there too, like there's sometimes where I didn't even want to bring stuff like that up, right? And so I think that's something that men and women go through, where they're having these thoughts and they're keeping them to themselves because of this, like you said, traditional like box of a relationship. Like, we're monogamous and we don't talk about those things, and and I've seen that quite a bit, right? And it seems difficult. So like, how does someone tiptoe up to the plate to take that swing, right? And like, we asked this a lot on the show, but from your perspective, like, what can they do if they realize this is more than just a thought I should keep to myself? Like, I want to express this. Like, what's a good starting point?
Okay, well, I will say I actually have a guide on exactly this that if anybody wants, I'm happy to send to them. It's on my Facebook as well. But some of my tips and tricks, I suppose, is, well, the first thing is every conversation is going to be different. Every person and every relationship is going to be different. But what's really important is firstly that you understand yourself, okay? That you understand what it is you want, and then that you understand how important that is to you. Is this a little important, or is this at your core identity and you actually need it to feel fulfilled going forward? Know that inside of yourself first. Have a bit of an idea of what actions you're going to take or not take should this conversation not go the way you expect it to.
Yeah.
And most importantly, though, I would say walk into the conversation holding space for the partner you are bringing this up with. This is a conversation that is almost certainly going to surprise or even shock them. And what the words that you say are potentially not the message your partner will receive. So for you to say, I want to explore sexually, they might hear, I'm not enough for you. And it will be easy to get frustrated and say, that's not what I said. Try not to. I really encourage you to have done the inner work on yourself first so that you can hold space for the partner you are bringing this up with. That way you can help coach them with it, because you need to appreciate the amount of monogamous messaging that we have been given in our lives, like those Disney movies, like those Barbie movies, and be prepared for them to be responding from a conditioned reactionary place. Yeah. And it's going to be different. Some people, maybe the conversation's going to go well, and for other people, maybe not. And another tip is to avoid the, hey, honey, we need to sit and talk.
Yeah.
That triggers everybody.
Yeah.
If instead, if you're able to, it might be a little bit easier to say, hey, I watched this podcast. What do you think about this? I saw, Ben and Sally. Did you know they're in an open relationship? How interesting. Bringing it up in some less confrontational ways where they don't already have their guard up might be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, I implore everyone to blame it on me and this podcast. Like, just say, I watched this podcast. I listened to this podcast, Sex Party with Dustin Rybka, and wow, I mean, what a concept. Let's talk about this. It was so interesting. Like, just blame it on me, and then that way they'll come over and hate listen to the show, and I'll get more clicks and views and things and whatever. Just trying to help everybody out. But no, I think what you said is awesome. Like, because we are in the age where there are podcasts like mine, there are people like you that are doing this every day, right? And you can, back in the day, it was kind of like, ooh, who's that woman that keeps going in and out of Ben and Sally's apartment 3 times a week? I don't think that's her sister. But now there are more entry points for you to bring up the conversation. I just think people probably are really, and some, I mean, I don't know if do you think it's different from America to Australia? Like, you're in Australia, I'm in America. I mean, do you think that it's more accepted in Australia to be non-monogamous?
I don't think you can compare the countries in that way.
Okay.
I think that it would be more appropriate to compare city versus rural for both countries, because I think, say, I'm in Brisbane, Australia. I'm not terribly concerned about telling some people that I'm polyamorous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are certain areas I wouldn't share that, but like on the whole, all of my friends know, for example, right?
Yeah.
I imagine for a major city in America, you'd probably have a similar outcome.
Yeah.
However, if you live in a more rural place, then you're much more likely to be keeping this to yourself, right? And that's true in both countries, that you have those rural, more religious areas as well. And then you have those cities that are just melting pots of all different kinds of people.
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump into just randomly, like what was your draw to non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy, and like also did you have your own? Obviously, you had your own journey, but then you wanted to like practice it and share it and sort of be, make it more of like your profession. So that's kind of two questions, but take us on your journey.
Yeah, I love to talk about my journey. I'll tell anyone who listens.
Good.
So it started many years ago, when I found a quiz online. It was called Mojo Upgrade. And what you do with this test, have you ever heard of this before?
I've heard of something similar, but not this particular one. Yeah.
It's not the BDSM test. This is for people who aren't ready.
I took that one.
Yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit less intense than that one. But it just goes through some like basic sexual preferences, and you take the test. And then after you take the test, you get a link to send to your partner, and they take the test, and you get 3 options for every answer. It's like, yes, I'm into this. No, I am not into this. Or I'm open to it if my partner wants it. And then you're only shown the things that you're both open to sexually. And swinging happened to be on the list. And I don't know if I selected yes or open to it. I actually wasn't that sure at the time what swinging actually was.
Mm-hmm.
So my partner, we matched on like everything. Almost everything on that test, I think, came up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And he was really excited by the swinging though. And I remember him saying like, oh my gosh, really? You'd be interested in swinging? Blah, 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 blah. And I remember thinking, what have I done? Because I didn't know that much about it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. We were 2 years into our relationship at the time. And honestly, it was fantastic. Like, I would recommend swinging to a wide variety of people, more people than I would recommend polyamory to. It's just so accessible and go at your own pace. It was a beautiful thing for me because I am not straight. I am bi-pan sort of sexual. And it was really cool to be able to explore that for the first time with somebody that I loved and trusted by my side. It also meant that I could explore, with men with him by my side, which I think a lot of women, especially women who've been in long-term relationships opening up, will resonate with this feeling of concern, I'll say, sometimes as much as fear, but at least a stress around being intimate with other men. And there was something really beautiful about being intimate with other men with this partner with me that just provided this beautiful safety net. So I never felt concerned because he was always right there and he was never going to let anything bad happen to me. So that was the very beginning of my journey. Do you want to ask any questions before I kind of keep going?
Well, sure. And just remember where you're at because I want to come back to it. But and so if you can, right, and you feel comfortable, obviously, take us through the first time that you had a swinging experience, and did you go all the way? What was it like, right? Like, were you nervous? Were you like, oh my God, we're going to make, what if this ruins? I mean, all of the things, right? And because I think it's important coming from someone like you, obviously, with who's obviously intelligent and has, the background, but also too, like sometimes people just dabble a bit before they go all the way. And then other times it's like, no, this is fucking awesome or whatever. So yeah, if you can tell us a little bit about the first experience, your first swinging experience, that'd be great.
Yeah. We took it slowly, which is what I'd recommend to anybody. We took it very slowly, and we always had conversations, like sort of debriefs afterwards, which was very healthy. And honestly, possibly the most fulfilling part of swinging was the conversations we would have later. First swinging experience, gosh, this takes me back. I'm really going to have to think about this. It depends on what you define as a swinging experience, like you said.
Whatever you want.
In the beginning, it was sort of like we would go to clubs and we would be intimate, just the two of us, in spaces that other people were also having sex.
So sex parties.
And that was, that's right. We were going to clubs. I should have said that. We weren't meeting up with people one-on-one. We were going to clubs predominantly. We did try some of that one-on-one stuff, but I hate online dating with passion.
Yeah, so do I.
Of meeting people that I didn't know potentially to have sex was just, for me personally, was really overwhelming. Other people do it great, but for me that was hard. But going to the clubs, I really enjoyed. So did he. I love dancing as well. So anywhere that has like a dance club sort of vibe, I'm going to be happy no matter what happens.
Sure.
So we went to quite a few different clubs and things, and we were having, like group sex experiences. You're right. And it was really beautiful because in those areas, totally pressure free, there's more than enough for everybody. So if all you want to do is like kiss a girl, then that's fine. You can go in and kiss your girl and then you can leave if you don't want to do anything more. So it was lots of like dipping our toes in and having really novel, fun experiences. And you meet really cool people in those places because to be in that place, you have to be open-minded. You don't even have the thought to be there unless you're an open-minded person. All these little experiences, and actually it's very strange. Our first full swap, meaning like we both had penetrative sex with another person, was actually at a festival. Because it was like fate. We ran into some swinger friends of ours that we'd kind of had one or two experiences with, and just randomly we ran into them at a festival, and we were having a good time. He and I had gotten a cabin there, and it was like, you want to come back to the cabin? And but there was no fear for us because we did it so slowly. And we communicated so thoroughly in the process that there wasn't really much fear. It was just fun. And in fact, like I didn't know that the word compersion existed. I didn't know that concept was a thing, which is like feeling joy at your partner's joy, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the very first time I experienced that feeling was in a swingers club when he was with another woman having a wonderful time. And I just remember like looking over and thinking, how beautiful. Like, I love him so much. And I'm so happy genuinely that he's this happy too.
Yeah. So you saw him, was she going down on him? Was he having sex with her? Like what was the act that you witnessed? And you're like, oh fuck, I feel really turned on. This is crazy.
Yeah, well, she was going down on him. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I telepathically knew that. I don't know why. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just beautiful because he and I were experiencing intimacy before that, and then she came into the picture, and I just turned around and just kind of watched it happening, and I was like, oh, and it's really great from that place of, I think a lot of people when they're opening their relationships, they're not sure exactly what is acceptable and what isn't. When you're doing things like swinging together, it's acceptable because your partner is right there. And obviously you should have conversations beforehand about what is and isn't acceptable. But you can look at each other and know. Like, he would have looked over at me and seen me. I probably was smiling. So you have like that inbuilt system. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's so cool. And I want to jump back for a second because you said you had many experiences leading up to a full swap, right? And so was it like, okay, the first time you guys went, you guys just kind of like danced and like were like, oh my God, this is so horny, let's go home and whatever? Or was it like maybe you kissed a girl and somebody touched his dick or something or whatever? Like, what were the little experience? And because I think that's important, because a lot of people think,
yeah, you're right.
They think like, if I go to a play party, if I go to a sex party, like I have to be totally naked and I have to be open for whatever, and someone's gonna stick a finger in my asshole or whatever. And so I think people, they don't realize, and I say this all the time, you can go to a sex party, you can go to an event and just hang out, maybe eat some peanuts. And I don't mean that sexually. Sometimes there are charcuterie boards at a sex party. So
that's right. There often are. Yeah. And you can, like, everyone that I've ever gone to has always had a space. And I've been to a lot. Like, I've been to some in Sydney. I've been to a bunch in the Brisbane area. And every single time I go to one, there is always a space that it's strictly no sex. It's usually clothes on. And you just go and you sit and you talk, and people can usually tell who's new, and they have a chat. Like, when we were new, people would come up to us all the time and say, hey, you new, blah, blah, blah. But those sort of micro experiences were little things like, kissing a girl from me. Oh gosh, I really wish I had these all written down. A lot of it was us. A lot of it was us having sex in rooms with other people.
Yeah.
It would be, I suppose, like him kissing other women too, touching other women, just in general, just like touch. And then I suppose at some point I would have started like kissing other men. And then... And
you're gradually working up to these things, like throughout the many visits.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, we would even stop and chat, like, halfway through, Like, there was one night where things were really intense, like, good, but intense. And, like, we stopped to have, like, a drink of water, and we just had a moment just to catch up, How are you feeling? How are things going? Do we want to leave before 10:30 so that we can get a burrito before bed tonight? Like,
the important conversations. Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
We used to have a bit of a rule because Guzman and Gomez would close at like 11 or something. So if a party wasn't kicking off at 10:30, it was like, well, do we want to get a burrito and go home?
I love that.
And like, it's all these things that build intimacy in that relationship. That there's a beautiful quote, I think it's in the Ethical Slut, that says, shared vulnerability increases intimacy. And all of these things are ways to achieve that. So we would have then, continued to just escalate little by little by little until we were in that full swap situation.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you cannot underestimate the post sex burrito. The post sex burrito is very, very important. Number two, you can never go to a sex party and not have a water break. So I love, and water break is like a term that I use in the show. I'm sure there's like a thing right here my editor has inserted that says water break, because I'm always drinking water while I host this thing. I'm like, water. You got to take a water break during sex party, whatever. So that's a thing we say on the show. So, and you hit it on your own. I didn't even have to interject it. We love that flows naturally. But I love this idea that you are embodying and sort of going on this like very drip, 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 sort of up to the big full swap kind of a thing. What did it feel like? And I love that you said compersion, and I just recorded an episode that we sort of compare cuckolding with compersion, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But
Different, but yeah.
Yeah. It's like similar, like same family, yet distant cousins, sort of thing. So for you, when you finally did the full swap, like how did that feel? I guess sexually, right? One, and two, because it's like this thing you've been working up to, and it's like this. I mean, when you finally get to something that you've been thinking about and fantasizing about for a long time, it's totally different. The first time, it always is, right? And then also too, like, what was the aftermath like?
Wow, I think it sounds from the outside looking in like a big deal.
Yeah.
But it didn't actually feel like that big of a deal because we had worked up to it slowly, and these were people we already knew. They were genuine friends of ours at this point. There's a great quote. It says, make friends out of swingers, not swingers out of friends. Because you could ruin your relationships in real life, but if you go into the swinging world, you will make friends with the people you swing with, and they are genuine, beautiful friendships. So it's like,
Right.
we all already knew each other, and we'd all been intimate before. This was just like that little step up. So it wasn't for me, it wasn't like a big monumental thing as such. It was like, that was cool, that was fun. I don't know. Now that you say it, I imagine I should have been more surprised by all of it, but it just all flowed so naturally. I think the biggest thing was it just felt like fate, because we ran into these friends at this festival, and the way it unfolded, like, we didn't go looking for it that night.
Yeah.
It just came to us, and it just felt like big confirmation that we were going kind of the right way in life, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so how many years ago was that, your first experience, like your first full swap? Okay, so a while ago.
Yeah. That's why I'm struggling to remember it all, because it's not in my recent memory. Like, maybe 5 years
Okay.
ago.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. So in the last 5 years, how, and I don't want to say like how crazy has it gotten, but like how much more involved has it gotten? What sort of things did you realize? Like, did you continue to sort of, and we don't have to go like the full story, but I just kind of want to paint a picture of your experience, your personal experience, that then now you use to like sort of instruct or guide or teach or lead, right? Because I think what you're doing is really cool, but like, did you then go back to sex parties? Have you done like, experiences with multiple men, multiple women, gangbangs, like double penetrations? Like, how far have we gone, and where did that stuff like sort of inform, like, wow, I feel so much better that I know that I like this, I might not like this, all those things. Broad question. Take your time.
Yeah. Look, sexually speaking, there was definitely a lot of novelty, a lot of rocks overturned. The specifics of which I'll keep to myself for my own, personal reasons, just because I want to have them just for me. But there's been lots and lots and lots of novel experiences that have been just fun. there's like a sexual aspect to it, the sexual gratification, but then there's like just a real playfulness and fun that comes from finding yourself in environments that are open and accepting. I found that because we had a couple of swinger friends that turned into genuine friendships, these would be things like we would go to like non-sexual events together, and we would go and get dinner, and we would catch up, and we would know about each other's lives. And then we would go and have really fun, novel experiences together in the bedroom, but it all kind of breeds this beautiful intimacy, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry, I think I've lost track of the question a little bit, but there's definitely a lot of...
How could you not? It was such a big fucking bold question. And again, I only want you to answer like what you're comfortable with. And I love that you have things that you want to keep private. I think that's great. I just wanted to paint more of a broad sort of mosaic of your experience, because I think what happens, what I was sort of getting at is, you're right. Like the more stones you uncover, it just so happens that you're like, oh shit, I kind of like this too. This add this to the menu, or whatever. So I think that's an important part.
That's true. I mean, I think, on that sexual side, there was lots of continuing to have those conversations and always asking each other about what kind of experiences we might have and what kind of desires we might want to explore. And in terms of like the overall mosaic of my journey, it doesn't all necessarily include him. But through the length of our relationship together, we dabbled in different little bits of open relating. I learned very quickly how hard it is to date women as a woman. I attempted I attempted that while we were together. And so we did different sort of adjustments to boundaries that started to open it more than just swinging. Yeah. And so that was really nice. And we had a very fluid relationship in that way. Our relationship did conclude. It wasn't anything to do with E&M. I want to say that. And he always tells that to people too, because we're both huge advocates for these lifestyles. And he and I have maintained like a beautiful friendship after this as well. And we're always checking in with each other. Since that time, I've really delved into polyamory. What does that mean? What is the difference between polyamory and swinging versus an open relationship? And now I practice what's called solo poly for now, which is a single person who is polyamorous, meaning that I don't take a primary partner. I am my own primary partner, but I still have loving and sexual relationships with other people.
Yeah. So you're the unicorn.
It can take that form. It can.
Yeah, I know.
But that doesn't mean it does.
Right. Just a little bonus.
Someone's token unicorn, which is kind of fun.
Of course. Yeah. Well, no, that's amazing. And, there's a lot there. And I'm sure, everybody wants to point to, oh, it was the non-monogamy that drove you guys apart. So I'm glad you guys are both like pushing against that. Cause that's ridiculous. The amount of breakups that are non-monogamous ethically versus monogamous is far outweighs. I mean, if you did the math, you'd realize that more monogamous people are breaking up than, non-monogamous. And that's just like data that's new, that's come out. So I love you guys are standing up for it.
Yeah. And we've had that chat, that sort of debrief after our relationship about E&M, and that we both are like, what a great thing to have experienced together. And I'm so grateful to him that we experienced that together. And it was such a beautiful journey. It's great.
No, yeah, that is very cool. You said dating women was hard. I give me some examples of why dating you finding out dating women was hard, because I think this is very interesting.
Yes, I think my other bisexual, pansexual women out there will resonate with this so deeply. A woman dating a woman is just a totally different landscape than a woman dating a man. I've been ghosted quite a lot. I've been nearly stood up. I've had a lot of challenges romantically with women. Sexually, going to clubs and things, not a problem. But actually making that connection emotionally and romantically is very challenging. I think, and this is just my opinion, that part of the issue is, I almost don't even want to say issue because in a way it's positive, but the issue in this context is that there are no roles in the way that the heterosexual male-female dynamic is quote unquote supposed to play out, because we do have cultural norms to some degree that dictate how we should act. It in theory makes that easier. That being said, getting away from gender roles is a good thing. But that being so deeply ingrained in our culture does kind of give a framework of how that is supposed to unfold, you know? Whereas when you are a woman dating a woman, you've both been conditioned to some degree to not be needy, to not make the first move, and all these kinds of things. So then it becomes like, well, which one of us makes the first move? And I guess that's probably somewhere I'm at in my journey right now. It can be really challenging. And I guess that nature of being a person discovering their sexuality just comes with just so many different things that you're having to unpack just to get to that first date.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I've talked to many women on the show, around the show, outside of the show that are like, oh no, I want to eat some pussy. I want to fuck a woman, but I'm not gonna. I can't. I wouldn't. No way. I can't date a woman. Like that's too difficult. Like that. I've heard that sentiment so many times, and that's why I wanted to kind of like punch in on it a little bit. With you.
Well, I do want to date a woman. That would be wonderful. But I'm actually a big scaredy cat in real life.
Sure. Yeah.
I struggle. Women are beautiful and terrifying. Yeah. So such is life. I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I think everything beautiful is terrifying in some way. Yeah. I think that's part of what makes it beautiful for sure. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it sounds like you've had all of this experience, you've done all these things, and like, and along the way, and I'm sure it's happened, but let's tackle the jealousy thing, because this is something that everybody goes to right away. I couldn't do it because I'm jealous, or I couldn't blah, 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 blah. And we've done the whole thing where it's like, if you sit with the jealousy and if you ride it out, then that's how you can sort of get through it. But maybe talk and say whatever you like about your experiences with jealousy in a non-monogamous lens.
Broadly speaking, when we talk about jealousy, I think what's really important is actually the accurate identification of emotion. Because I think sometimes we think we're jealous when we're not. Sometimes we think we're jealous when actually it's envy. I'm sure many people have already heard that before. But also maybe it's just, jealousy is really just insecurity. Insecurity or fear manifesting in some kind of way. I think this idea of just ride it out, I understand where you're coming from and I agree with it for sure. Yeah. But another way to look at it that might make more sense is that riding it out is stopping it and looking at it maybe objectively with curiosity. I like to say have some curiosity around, where is this coming from? What is it really telling me? I've been a person that I've not experienced personally a ton of jealousy in my journey. I always expected it to come up. I always had, and maybe this is important to say, like I always thought, oh, at what point, when will the other shoe drop, kind of a feeling. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, it didn't really come up, not in that long-term relationship I had. However, interestingly, I did have jealousy come up with a casual partner a few months back. And it really surprised me because here's me thinking, I've been in this long-term relationship. I've done E&M. I if I didn't get jealous then, I'll never get jealous, was kind of how I felt. And that was a mistake. Because this lovely man, and he's awesome. We had a very sexual relationship. It was a bit of like a friends with benefits kind of thing. And we had a great like friend vibe too. We had really nice chats and everything. He might watch this at some point, which would be embarrassing, but that's fine. But anyways, he knew that I was E&M, and of course he was more than free to be with other women. But once he was with another woman, and it was on Instagram a lot, I just started to spiral. And it caught me off guard because I was like, I hardly know this person. We only had a sexual relationship, really. Why am I feeling this way? And I remember like sitting on the floor in my bedroom, because why sit on your bed in your bedroom when you can cry on the floor?
Yeah.
And
way better.
And I just sat there and I was just crying and I couldn't understand what was going on. But when I really sat with it and unpacked it, I started to go, okay, the reality is I know objectively that this is not a person that I want a bigger, more meaningful relationship with. I'm actually happy with what I have with him, and I like it. It's fulfilling. It's good. And I think I just found that this particular woman he was seeing was triggering certain insecurities, inside of myself, where I think that subconsciously it was triggering this, like, I'm not enough, blah, blah, blah. But all of those things, it's because of where I was mentally at the time. And that just happened to be the thing that triggered it. So,
Wow.
and I read a lot of people who are like, why is it I'm not jealous at all of my partner being with his girlfriend, but my boyfriend, I'm insanely jealous when he sees someone else? And I'm like, well, first of all, emotions don't always make logical sense. And when we're trying to process our emotions, over intellectualizing them can be a big hang up. And actually just allowing yourself to be in the emotion and then understanding after the emotion has passed, like, okay, maybe that relationship just isn't at that level of security you have with your husband. And that's okay.
Yeah, no, that is super interesting. And I think also I would add from my just podcast host fucking brain is that maybe sometimes the promise of something that you don't really know what it is just yet, you want to keep it casual, you want to whatever. But when something comes in and quote unquote like threatens that ideal, that promise, you're like, wait a minute, something's stirring up something I don't even know what is what yet. And then it makes this sort of weird, jealous sort of thing. And so, no, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that's really important because, and also to add to that a little more gasoline on that idea is that emotions are unstable and just all over the place. And we are human after all, it's just like sometimes things trigger something. We have no idea why you're upset,
And this is the great thing about E&M is that I really see it as a tool for healing. If you're getting triggered on the journey, you're being shown places that you can heal. Because, if you're insecure about something and that gets triggered in E&M, it shines this bright light on it. But what you don't realize is that insecurity, let's just say it's as simple as you feel like you're not enough. Okay, that's not simple, but that's just basic.
Sure. Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's generic. That's the better word. I'm not enough. Okay. And that comes up in your E&M journey. Well, honey, that's going to manifest everywhere in your life. That's going to manifest in your friendships. That is going to manifest in the wider context of your family. And it's going to manifest in your career, So if it comes up in your E&M journey, then that gives you the ability to see it and start working to heal it. And can you imagine the flip side of suddenly living your life like you are enough? Imagine how you're going to walk into every restaurant. Imagine the difference in the way you call your mom, if you still call her after that. Imagine how you show up to work and in interviews and, pitching something in, the boardroom or something. Like, it can transform your life in a really magical way.
Yeah, and that's a part that we don't talk about a lot, and not just in your relationship, how it can spice things up after the fact. Like you've had some sort of like open experience or sex party experience or swinging experience, and then all of a sudden it's like there's a new level of like, new level of horniness unlocked, like for the relationship. And then there's this confidence piece that you can do these things and handle these things and feel these things that you then do take into your life. You do take into your work. You do take into the way you dress and act and talk and all of these things. It is a really life affirming yet confidence building sort of journey or experience, right? And then it sounds like you took that and you were like, well, I feel great. I feel confident. I feel whatever. I'm going to start this business where I'm going to help people feel the same way. So tell me about Relationships Revolution. Like, did you just say like, I'm really good at this. I need to everybody needs to feel how great I feel. Like, is that how this came about? And tell me why you chose to start it.
I think it comes from like a sort of hippie part of me that's like, the world can be so beautiful and we don't have to live the way that we're living. There's such a more fulfilling way to do this. And I say sometimes that I've created my business so that maybe one day there can be a generation of people that can have the life that I wish I could have right now, because, sometimes I talk to people. A friend of mine said to me, oh, I don't know if I could be polyamorous because, I can't remember the whole reason now, but she said, but maybe if I lived in a tribe, I could do it with, my sister wives kind of around and blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, you're preaching to the choir. Like, I also want that. And people who tell me things like I could never do E&M because, it's too complicated, there's too much, like I don't have enough time or blah, blah, blah. I don't argue with them, It's like, the problem is there's such a deficit in our skills, in our interpersonal skills, that it's a tragedy. The things that I'm teaching people aren't about, it's obviously for the E&M community, but anybody who takes my program will get benefit no matter how monogamous you are, because I talk to you about boundary setting, about communication, about self-worth, about your nervous system, how to be a more robust person and to be able to engage with people in more meaningful ways and also have a sense of self in that communication that you can actually guide it with what you do and do not desire in your life, right? So why did I make this business? There's so many reasons, but it really boils down to our world can be so much more beautiful. We have the education. We have the freedom. That's huge. We have the freedom to do this, and the education is out there. Everything is out there. It's just about plugging each thing in at this point. And when I say freedom, that is when I'm speaking to the women. It's not that long ago that marriage was just for trading assets.
Yeah, well, here in America, we might be back to trading, just marriages for trading assets very soon. So we might all have to book flights to Australia to get away from that. But I'm not going to be pessimistic. I'm not going to be whatever. Help us. No, I'm kidding. We'll be fine. We'll work. We'll figure it out. But no, I love everything that you said. All of my bullshit aside, I love everything you said because I think that it's one of these things that's like it does seem so simple and like hippy dippy or whatever, but it is true. It is true that there are other paths, there are other ways that are very simple that may almost seem too simple, and I feel like you're putting a finer point on that. And I think that the work that you're doing is awesome. That's why I asked you to be on the show, because your content resonated with me. And I was like, oh, this person would be really great on the show and to sort of like bring your message to the audience. And so I appreciate that. So moving into the final piece of the episode, and you can answer this however you want to, right? But like for you personally, and with all of the knowledge that you have, I would say all the advantages that you have, about non-monogamy, about sexuality, about, connection and emotion, what does the ideal, the absolute perfect scenario for you look like, in terms of like, is it you with, are you in a tribe and everyone's worshiping you? Do you just have a boyfriend and another boyfriend and three girlfriends and someone that's around to just make sure everyone's doing like what is it? Truly, if you could paint your own thing, and there's no rules, right? I'm putting you in the hot seat. You can say whatever you want. You can refuse to answer, but like, what does it look like in your mind for you personally?
Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate that question so much. Right in this moment of time, I am living exactly what I want to be doing, which is beautiful. Like I said, I'm solo poly and I'm taking that as it comes. Like I am really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying putting myself as my primary partner. And it almost sounds contradictory sometimes to polyamory, but it's really not. All healthy relationships, monogamous included, start at a healthy sense of self, at a healthy sense of self-worth. And I want this to be what people always take away when they see my face, is that you're worthy of the relationship that you desire. You're worthy of your boundaries being respected. If you want something, go and get it. It's out there for you. Don't settle, no matter what it is. Okay. What do I want at the moment is what I'm doing. In the future, that will likely change. I believe in the fluidity of relationships. And for me, my everything I come down to is I will love who I want to love, how I want to love them. That is what relationships are for me. And anybody who comes into my life is not allowed to tell me how to love other people. And that's my benchmark now. That's the baseline when anyone comes into my life. And I'm just open to what comes my way. I don't have some huge dream of like this massive polycule. I don't have this dream of a, primary partner or a triad or whatever. I really don't know where my life will take me. And I think that's beautiful. And I'm just open to what comes in.
No, I think that's the absolute perfect answer. I love that answer and I appreciate that. And thank you for that. So final question, right? Give someone some advice that maybe is a little lost, right? And you sound like you're very confident and you sort of, you knew, to take that quiz with your partner. You felt that pull, right? But maybe somebody doesn't. Maybe they're lost in society or religion or people looking down on them or whatever. Give some advice on, if they're feeling sort of not themselves. It doesn't have to even be, hey, come be non-monogamous, it's fun, like or whatever. But give someone some advice with all of your intellect and all of your beautiful knowledge that you have and a life experience on how to maybe move more towards finding themselves in this way.
I'd say the first thing that comes to mind, and I know it's cliche, but bear with me, is that it's okay to be different, that it's good to be different. Mm-hmm. And where I'm going with this is I live quite differently to a lot of people in my life, most people in my life. And I'm also probably the happiest person that I know. And I think there's something to that. When you look at how miserable everybody is, I say that with such a big smile and I shouldn't, but it's like all of these people are miserable and they're living life in this all very specific, similar way. So if you think that something that breaks the norm will make you happy, honestly, logic dictates that it will. Surround yourself with good people, even if it makes you alone for a while. It's better to be alone and be your only support person than have other people who will pull you down because you're going a direction, you're brave enough to go a direction that will make you genuinely happy. Be careful sometimes with who you share your desires with, because a lot of us share these desires, but a lot of people also get triggered when you have the bravery to actually say what it is that you want and that you're going to go and get it. Because you are triggering in them the fact and possibly some shame that they are not trying to make action towards that life. Yeah, it's very basic information, but that will help everybody, no matter what it is you need, and it definitely applies to the E&M space.
I mean, you might think that that's like simple and bear with you and all that, but that's literally one of my favorite answers that I've gotten all season. So thank you so much, Polly May. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for being open and honest and sort of going through the process of sex party and having questions thrown at you and answering so honest and open. And let's tell the party goers in the audience where they can find you, where they can work with you, where they can find you on social.
On Facebook is the best place actually right now, which is Polly May. And you'll see my beautiful face with a little open relationship coach thing around my profile picture. And I do have a support group. It's called E&M Support Group for Beginners or something like that. And it's awesome. It's just for, you don't have to be a total beginner to get on that group. Anyone can come and join if you want to help provide that support to people. It is a safe space. I do not allow or tolerate anybody who perpetuates judgment, and that includes within the E&M community. You know, sometimes people judge different forms of E&M. If you're safe in this space is all I'm saying. And then on Instagram, I'm Relationships Revelation.
Yeah, no, we love that. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'd love to have you back, especially as you continue on down your journey. Sure. And you're doing these big things. So, but thank you so much for being with me this week on the show.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Yeah, of course. Talk soon. Huge thank you to my guest, Polly May, for being with me on the show this week. Make sure you guys go check out everything she is up to. Go follow her on Facebook. Go follow her on Instagram. If you guys are loving Sex Party and you want to see more guests like Polly, she'll be back at some point in the future, but you're really loving, appreciating the show. You want more of it. You want to make sure you never miss an episode. Well, how can you show that love, that desire, that appreciation? If you're listening to this on platforms like Apple and Spotify, you could leave a rating, you could leave a review, but you want to make sure that you are subscribed to the show. That's the most important. So forget that other stuff and make sure that you're subscribed to the show so you never miss a new episode every single goddamn Wednesday, especially if you are subscribed or think you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts. They've been doing this weird random thing where they're unsubscribing people. So go to Apple Podcasts, go to Sex Party with Dustin Rybka, upper right-hand corner. If you see anything other than a check mark, click that little icon, drop-down menu will appear, click resume subscription, resume downloads, and bing, bang, boom, bop, you are re-subscribed. If you're watching on YouTube, I love you, I see you, I appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube and you were going to have a sex party experience, would you rather it be in a professional sex party setting or in the back room of Taco Bell after they've closed? Let me know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube and you're loving the show, you want to make sure you never miss a new episode. Well, what can you do, right? Well, you could, there's a lot of things you could do, and I appreciate all of them. You could like all the videos, you comment on all the videos. I love talking to you guys. But, let's be real. You want to make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you never miss a new episode every single Wednesday. I am always available in the DMs on Instagram, and I will see you all right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter @SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin @DustinRybka.